Well, hello there. Welcome to this broadcast of After the Kids Move In radio form. Hi, I'm your host, Pat O'Brien, along with this week's guest, Suzanne Bachner. Hey, Suzanne. Suzanne, can you say hello?
Hi, Pat.
And tonight's guest is the real good adoptee. Suzanne is an award-winning playwright, director, adoptee, and adoption rights advocate. Her acclaimed play, quote, The Good Adoptee, is the true story of Suzanne's search for her birth parents in the face of New York State's sealed records. The Good Adoptee has toured to the London International Fringe Festival and all over the U.S., including a 7-week, 9-city Connecticut tour to support the vital legislation efforts of Access Connecticut. Suzanne's play has won awards for Best Autobiographical Script and Best Actress for Original Star Anna Bridgeforth when it premiered in the United Solo Theater Festival in New York City. It was also named the best play by the Indie Theater Now and is included in ITN's Plays and Playwrights 2017 anthology. Theater Scene called The Good Adoptee a spellbinding emotional detective story. And High Drama raved The Good Adoptee is everything you want in wanted a solo show to be, well crafted, lovingly performed, and thoroughly entertaining. For more information, visit thegoodadoptee.com. Hey, let me ask you a simple question. What inspired you to create The Good Adoptee?
Well, first of all, Pat, I'm so thrilled to be your guest, and to be here on this very special day, and to provide some counter-programming. I've written about adoption throughout my entire, playwriting career, but it's been, more fictionalized versions, although very personal, and in very different ways. And when I started doing my search for my first family and for my origins, I was obsessed about it when I finally took the leap, and I was documenting it for myself. And I was also writing about my early childhood experiences as an adoptee at the same time. And so I really realized that I needed to tell the story in a completely truthful, totally true story way, in a way that I hadn't written about adoption before, because I was searching for names, I was searching for specifics, and as I was searching for those things and didn't know them, I felt like, how could I relate this dramatic life experience to a theatrical audience if I'm changing names and not being totally truthful. So my truth sort of had to, come together, and that's how I ended up writing The Good Adoptee as a completely true story.
Now, you called the play The Good Adoptee. Does that mean, what does that mean?
Well, The Good Adoptee, is a term that was coined by a complete hero of mine, Betty Jean Lipton, or BJ Lipton, and I'm sure your listeners are aware of her work. She is a brilliant writer, and she was an adoptee and adoption activist as well. And she came up with this term, and it's a sort of a complex term, because if you're a good adoptee, you are also a bad adoptee, because her concept is that it's sort of two sides of the same coin, and both reside in every adoptee. Mm-hmm. So when you are playing the good adoptee, you are doing everything as everyone expects and wants you to do. Mm-hmm. And you're fitting in with your family, and you're, sort of not questioning anything. And then when you're being the rebellious bad adoptee, you're wreaking havoc and causing trouble. And so, we're sort of keeping both of those sides all at once. So the good adoptee is sort of like a wink, wink, nod, nod, mm-hmm. because, basically the culture sort of tells us, don't tell your true story as an adoptee. Adoption is rainbows and unicorns, and don't do anything to go against that. So, and sometimes adoption can be rainbows and unicorns. I've had a lot of wonderful rainbow moments in my adoption, mm-hmm. but it's not just that.
And there's an implication that if you want to know about your history, that somehow that's the adoptee being the bad adoptee.
Yes, because it's making things complicated, and really things are complicated. And it's really embracing that complication and sort of trying to figure it out and integrate it and learn about it. And the one big takeaway I had from doing a search and from also writing this play and performing the play, was that the more I learned about myself and my origins and where I came from and who I am completely, and not just from, my adopted self, experience. The more I was able to integrate and learn all of those things, the stronger I became as a person, and the more I was able to share of myself with other people, including my parents. Mm-hmm. And they really experienced that as well. So all of that has just made, my whole family much closer, and, also with my husband Bob as well.
Yeah.
There was all of this that we did not have, access to. And then all of a sudden, not all of a sudden, but in bits and bobs, we had, much more information, that I had to integrate, and that he was very supportive in me integrating and figuring out. And then I was much more present,
Mm-hmm. So learning more about your history, you're saying that actually made you more present today.
It made me more present.
Mm-hmm.
It made me more clear and grounded.
Mm-hmm.
And it made me, able to connect with other people in a more full and real way, because I wasn't sort of filling in question marks and blanks mm-hmm. with, I'm just going to fudge this because I don't know it. It made me, more able to come at life with a full grounded picture and feeling, connected to, not only my heritage and history through, my family. And when I say family, I mean adopted family, but also through my original first family. Mm-hmm. Because, the family tree for an adoptee it's a little more unique and complicated. But if you're saying, no, my tree is just like yours.
Right.
You're lying to yourself and to others. And, sadly, sometimes you're asked to do that because it's uncomfortable for people. But, you sort of have to find out who's going to embrace the whole picture of you.
Well, I saw the play, The Good Adoptee, at least 3 times. I'm thinking it possibly 4 times. And I know one of the times that I saw the play in a Manhattan theater, the audience was almost all adoptive parents. And I was just curious in terms of the reactions you get from that particular audience. I was just wondering if anything stands out about that particular production, since the audience was almost everybody in that audience was an adoptive parent.
Well, let me tell you, before I was ever a real badass adoptee, I really was a very good adoptee. And so when I first wrote this play, I was very nervous about how it would be perceived. I mean, I also wanted to share it with people who are not in the adoption community, because I think that the experience of adoption has so much deep universal threads and appeal in terms of identity, mm-hmm. belonging, human connection, and all of these like really big human needs mm-hmm. and experiences. But I was just when I first started performing it, or when we first brought it, because I don't perform it myself, I have these amazing actors who perform it, but mm-hmm. I was terrified because I really didn't want to upset or offend or rattle people in a way that was not positive. So and I mean, I wrote it in a way that I knew I had to tell my truth, and I had to not worry about offending or mm-hmm. I had to stick with telling my story, and not be a people pleaser, which a lot of times good adoptees are.
Yeah.
I'm not speaking from personal experience at all about that.
Okay.
But the wonderful thing is that it was really received very well. by all different people in the adoption community, including social workers and, it was across the spectrum, very positive. But as we moved along, there was one point where I spoke to Bob about this, and I said, I really want to share this with more adoptive parents. And I think we had brought it to AFF-CNY.
Yep.
And I felt, I think that this could be a really positive conversation, and it's something that I really want to do with the piece, because we had brought it to, there were a lot of adoptees who had seen it at that point, a lot of lay people, so to speak, who had seen it, and a lot of first mothers. And so I really felt like, I really want to make that connection with adoptive parents. And while we were touring in Connecticut, we actually did have a couple incidents with adoptive parents who were in audiences, which were a little prickly. And it was coming more from a place of, just not being as aware of the issues, and really just being a little threatened, about it, and I was asked by this one guy, are you like, how can you be so ungrateful? And, how do your parents even deal with you telling the story in this way? And I was really heartbroken by that. But I said, I also understood this guy didn't get it. And he was sort of clinging to it, just a more antiquated, viewpoint about adoption. And, I also had the knowledge, that this was a play that had really actually, evolved my parents in their thinking. Cause, they adopted at a certain point in time several years ago. and they did everything right. They did everything that they were supposed to, that they were told. Like, the agency, said, tell her right away, immediately, and integrate this and all of this. And I never had an experience of finding out that I was adopted being an event.
Right.
It was just something I always knew. And adoption was always very positive, with my family. And it was just part of our story as a family.
Did you ever, with your own family, did you ever experience the fear in the early days that they might ever disown you if you wanted to know as much as you wanted to know, or if you did this? Were you ever worried about that?
Well, I was really worried about the disowning part around actually doing this play.
Oh, okay.
That was my big disowning kind of moment, but definitely that seed went back to doing the search itself. And that was just because they didn't know that was a completely normal experience for someone who didn't grow up knowing exactly where they came from to be curious about that. It was just a lack of understanding of that.
Yeah.
Or that if they were having, scared or nervous reactions as parents, with the kid who wanted to go and find other parents who were connected to them, that their feelings of being nervous or scared about that or threatened by that was also completely human normal.
Yes.
And at the time that I was searching, they went, and I kind of seeded it, because we've always been very open about everything, but I knew that they didn't really need to know the nitty gritty of what I was going through the search. So I would sort of give them the digest version of it.
Gotcha.
To keep them in the loop. Like nothing big happened without them knowing, but I didn't take them on the whole ride because it was complicated for them. And as I was going through it, they went, as I said, they went to Spence Chapin and spoke to a social worker.
Oh,
and
cool.
It was sort of like a one and done situation, because once they were just like, oh, it's totally normal for a kid to want to know that. And, oh, it's totally normal for parents to feel a little threatened by that. Then they were like, oh, okay. Gotcha. And then it took a while, and it took them seeing the play, for them to really evolve about that. And to understand, what this was. And now they're there's still parts that I don't know, and there's still parts of my search that I have left to do. And they're just totally supportive about it. I mean, in a way that they weren't when I was initially doing the search.
Gotcha.
But I didn't really think they would disown me when I was doing the
Right.
search. I had a spasm right before we went, we did the show. And that was because they were going to be in the audience for like the first show. And it was a lot of, and they're represented in the show as mom and dad.
Oh, wow. So the first time you performed the show, they were actually in the audience?
They were in the audience.
Oh, I thought there was a few times
No.
later. Oh man.
And they've always been extremely supportive of me as a writer-director. But this was a little different because I'd written about adoption before, as I said, but not like this is what happened. This is a totally true story.
Now,
so it was a little different, because they're getting quoted and portrayed on stage.
Gotcha.
But the interesting thing that I found when I was writing the play was that I thought that all the parents were going to be these like huge characters in it. And then as I crafted the play more and more and discovered what the play was, I realized that this was so much more about the Suzanne character, about me, and my search for my identity and missing pieces and discovering all of what was missing and integrating that. And the parents actually became, supporting characters. Like they weren't cameos. They're important, but they were not, the starring lead characters.
That's right.
Because it wasn't as much about them.
Right.
And I think that was a real turning point, as well of, having that initial adoption story that I knew as a kid and that was, formulated with so much love from my parents. They were the ones bringing the baby home, and they were the lead characters there, and I'm a little baby, and then this part of the story, it's like they are supporting characters, and it's really about me and my journey. And, thankfully they at a, later age in life, frankly, Pat, I mean, they really evolved about this.
Good.
Really,
good. Yeah. Now,
and that kind of love that I experienced with them around this, I think also drove me to be like, I really want to bring this to other adoptive parents because I've seen its effect on my parents.
And it's had great impact on the adoptive families that we work with here at the Coalition. Hey, Suzanne, something very, very big happened here in New York State just last year that took effect on January 15th. Can you tell us a little bit about why it was so significant that now all adopted persons have access to their original birth certificate? And tell me some of the advocacy that you did to help make that happen.
Well, I mean, speaking of coalitions, I think this would not have happened without NYARC, the New York Adoptee Rights Coalition. This was such a huge event. And, when we first started doing the Good Adoptee and realizing that it was also an advocacy piece and, could be really used in legislative efforts, we were more focusing in Connecticut and touring in Connecticut because, it had been so for 4 decades plus, of activism just stalled in New York.
Yes.
And it's miraculous that it happened and not just miraculous, but, the coalition really came in and made this change happen. And it's just remarkable. And I hope that it's going to be, create real momentum, in other states.
I hope that
it's just
too.
so crazy. I mean, I think when I first started searching and, found out that my original birth certificate was, sealed under lock and key. And that my actual birth certificate that I grew up with was a fake government document. I still haven't actually gotten over the shock of that fact.
Yeah.
And you know what? It was so lovely, just circling back to the show that you were talking about, which was populated all with adoptive parents, I believe, which was the Long Island, adoptive families
Yes.
show that we did. We did 2 shows, and they sold out our 2 shows, and Suzanne just sort of came to me and said, we want to be in the, we want to see the show en masse. And it was so special because it was, fantastic, adoptive families who were there to see the show, adoptive parents.
Yeah.
And you being one of them. And I remember at the talkback for that show, inviting you up and talking about how, the original birth certificates were not accessible and the fight for that and how moving it was to me. And I think I cried, and I think I cry whenever I talk about this. So, but it was just so moving to me how clear and focused and supportive that you have been and are, in terms of this fight, because everyone needs to be in it. And it's so important for adoptive parents to be, part of that advocacy. It's crucial.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's so crucial to our children, particularly when they become adults and hopefully now, whenever they have the need that we can get the information. Well, you went fast, Suzanne. What's a good way of reaching you? I know you're going to do the performance in Seattle next week, but if somebody just wanted to be in touch with you, what's the best way?
Well, go to The Good Adoptee. We have a contact page. It's very easy to reach me there or on social media, from there. And I'm always happy to be in touch with people in the community.